السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أرحب بجميع الحاضرين في هذه الندوة الافتراضية تحت عنوان التدريس باستخدام الذكاء الاصطناعي، والتي ينظمها المركز الوطني للتعليم الإلكتروني. وفيها سنستعرض الأساليب المتطورة للتدريس واكتساب المعرفة حول المزايا والمنهجيات لتخطيط التدريس باستخدام الذكاء الاصطناعي. وللتنويه، ستكون الترجمة الفورية للغة العربية متاحة خلال هذه الندوة، وبإمكانكم الآن الضغط على زر الترجمة أسفل الشاشة. Hello, this is Nasser Al Ansari from City of Riyadh, the capital of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. On behalf of the National E-Learning Center, we welcome you all to this webinar on teaching with artificial intelligence. This session will immerse educators in the evolving landscape of teaching aided by AI. You will gain insights into the advantages and methodologies behind AI-driven lesson planning, exam proctoring, the dynamic nature of adaptive assessments, the vast potential of AI-enhanced question banks, and the personal touch brought in through AI mentoring. It is with great honor we welcome Mr. Scott Meyer, the co-founder of CHIP, who will be the moderator of this session. We thank these distinguished speakers for joining us today, and I will hand over the mic to the moderator. To you, Mr. Scott.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It is great to be here with such distinguished guests and attendees. We are here for an engaging discussion all about AI and education. And to do that, we're not only gathering with great minds in the audience, we also have some great speakers joining us from around the world. Today, we encourage you to ask questions throughout the session. There is a Q&A section you'll see at the bottom, and you can feel free to put your questions there. I'll make time between each speaker and at the end of different sections to answer those, as well as answer in the chat. And we know that we have a lot to learn from you too. So we look forward to hearing your ideas and how you are using AI and education. But we want this to be an interactive and engaging session. And so we want to start by making sure we get to know a little bit about who is here. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started and have a little bit of participation here as we get this session going. So the first thing we want to know is who is here. So I have my friend Sarah, who is going to help with a few of the polls. So the very first thing, we're going to put up a poll and get a sense of who is in the audience. We want to know how comfortable you are with AI. Some of your, if you've experienced it, if you feel like you've never used it, not comfortable, you can put that first one. If you have some experience, maybe you've played around with it, or you feel like you kind of know what it is, you are somewhat comfortable. And if you are an old pro, have been using it in the classroom, you can go ahead and put in very comfortable. So we'll give you just a few seconds here to put in your vote, and we can see kind of where the skill levels are. We're happy to go wherever you are. And if you've never used AI, this session is for you. And if you're an old pro, this session is also for you. We can kind of dive in. Each section and each speaker will provide a little bit of context on why it matters, and then we'll also then go into how to use it. So by the end of the session, we hope that you have a lot of tools that you've actually played with or have been exposed to that we can kind of dive into. All right. So why don't we close the poll and see where the results are? I don't know, Sada, if you can show that to me. We could, yeah, there we go. All right. Very comfortable is 72%. Somewhat comfortable is 25%. And not comfortable, just 2. So you guys are very, know what you're doing. So that's great. We can kind of hit the ground running and kind of dive in. So let's go ahead and ask one more poll, Sarah, if you can turn that on, just to get a sense of where you work, where you kind of are an educator. Are you educating in K-12, so kindergarten through maybe the end of high school or equivalent, or is it in a higher education setting, or is it in a private setting or something else? So let's open up one more poll to get a sense of kind of what place you are teaching and educating. So I'll have Sarah open that up. And if you're having any problems, again, feel free to drop into the Q&A and ask any questions. We'll be there to help. So we'll wait here for Sarah to open up this poll and have a chance to meet everybody. While we're doing that, there we go, occupation. So you can see if you're an educator in K-12, in higher ed, if you're a trainer or something else. So I'll give you just a second to put in that poll. Just give the best answer. If we don't have the exact category for you, that is fine. We just kind of want to get a sense of examples we can use and maybe other things we can highlight in your sector. So I'll give you just a few more seconds here. And this is so fun to do, literally a global session, right? So I'm coming to you today from the center of the North America in Fargo, just like the movie or the TV show, if you've ever seen that. We have Dr. Michael Peck, who's going to be joining us, and you'll meet more about him, who's coming from the east side of the United States. We have Vridi, who's coming from India, and of course, many of our attendees here from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as well. So excited to connect people from around the world. So let's see, we can close that poll and see what the results are, so we get a sense of kind of who's in the room with us today. And it looks like a good split here. We got about a fourth of people in K-12, about a third in higher ed, and then a third everyone else. So fantastic. We're excited because we know that AI can really empower all of you, whether you're teaching young children or you're working in an adult setting. This is going to be an exciting session for you. All right. So thank you, Sada, for that, and for everyone for being here. So excited to jump in. Now, our agenda today is to talk a little bit about teaching with AI, how to use AI for exams and assessments, and then how to use AI to really support students in whatever context they're in. And so we'll kind of hit all of those areas and have lots of times for questions. So as I mentioned, I'm Scott Meyer. I'm coming to you live from Fargo, North Dakota in the United States. I write about AI in education at 5min.ai, 5minute.ai, and I'm the founder of a software company that builds AI tools. And I love exploring what's possible with technology. I think my entire life has been translating technology to how it can help people. So I live in a rural part of the country. There's a lot of challenges with having enough teachers, having opportunities for students. And so AI has been a boon for this part of the world where people really have opportunities that they maybe didn't before. And one of the reasons we're doing this session is because of this trend, which is that AI is now so good that it can pass exams, that it can do the work that we used to expect students to do on papers. You can see here that GPT 3.5 is in blue, and GPT-4 is in green. And you can see that every iteration of these AI tools has gotten better at passing standard exams. So these are all different kind of exams given in the United States on different subjects. And so we have to rethink what education is and what it means. And we might be at this calculator moment, right? Where in the 1980s, this is a picture of people protesting against calculators because they thought that students would no longer learn math. And as Ethan Mollick notes here, over 169 countries now have free access to this tool. So it's really an enabler that everyone can access wherever they are in the world, whether it's in Fargo or Riyadh or in India, right? So it's a chance for all of us. And we heard right before the session that there is access to ChatGPT in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. There's not always access everywhere you are. And so there is a link I'll share in the chat in a little while, but you can look for this video, how to access it wherever you are, whether work setting or country. And so there are a lot of tools that'll give you access to this power, but we'll kind of showcase different tools today. If there's anything you don't have access to, there are ways to kind of find alternatives as well as access those. And so what we want you to do today is what I call the 5-minute method, which is we want you to try it, apply it, and amplify it. So when you encounter a new AI tool, I think it's a good idea to spend just 5 minutes trying it out, just looking at it, getting a sense of what it is. That's what we're going to show you a little bit today. And then take 5 minutes more to apply it to your own classroom setting or your own work. And if you find that it fits or helps, then use it. If not, don't, right? There's enough tools out there. You can find something that actually fits what you want and what will amplify your knowledge and skills. If it does work and you apply it, think about sharing it with a colleague, because once you're able to teach or use it, you're going to really develop the knowledge and comfort. So that's kind of our challenge for you today. So what I want to do is I'm going to give you a couple frameworks to kind of frame this conversation and then hand it off to my brilliant colleagues to dive into some ways to do this in the classroom. So the first framework I want to give you today is what I call the AI sandwich. And I think this is a really good reminder of how AI fits in our lives and our professional work. The AI sandwich, you can think of like a hamburger or a sandwich where you have humans on the top and the bottom and the AI in the middle as the meat, right? So whenever we encounter an AI tool, we bring the context and the details and the question, right? So we say, do X for me, create a curriculum for me about the water cycle. So I'm giving AI the question. Then the AI is going to do its work and try to do its best to answer me. It's going to come up with a solution. But then I still need to take that solution and edit it and modify it and deploy it, right? So what the biggest frustration I see people have with AI is it doesn't give the right answer right away. And that's because it's more of a dance where you go back and forth, you ask questions and iterate and move towards the right answer. So just think about any AI tool is not going to be what we call a one-shot solution. It's not going to be one question, you get exactly what you want. Instead, it's back and forth, what some people call multi-shot, which is just asking, getting answers, and improving. And over time, you can really train and get your AI tool to be exactly how you want it to behave. So think about the AI sandwich throughout this work and knowing that it's going to empower you as a teacher, not take away your power. The second framework or technique that I want to give you as we kind of enter this session is what I call the RIPE method. This is just a way to talk or ask questions to an AI, what some people might call prompting an AI. And it's RIPE. So whenever we are talking to an AI, it's really good to give it a role, tell it who it should be. So you are an expert instructional designer, right? So that tells the AI how to communicate with us. Then we give it an instruction. So create a lesson plan on the water cycle. That's our explicit question. And then it's really important to do these last two that a lot of people forget, which is give it parameters. So what can it do or what should it not do, right? So right at a fifth grade level, use lots of visuals. Don't use big words, or maybe use big words, or make sure that you use language that could be understandable in a variety of cultural contexts. Whatever those parameters are, make sure to tell it so it gives you the best answer. And then finally, if you can, give it an example. AI is really good at mimicking or learning from what you want. And so thinking about, here's a lesson plan I created in the past, create one for me. Or here's an email I wrote in the past, create one similar to this. Or here's a paper that I wrote, create one similar to this. So use that RIPE method and just kind of have those two frameworks as we kind of approach some of these AI tools. We're going to be really excited to kind of learn how we can do that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about AI in the classroom. So let's do one more poll before I hand it off to my colleagues about how you might be using AI in the classroom. So Sada, you can pull up our next poll, and we want to get a sense of if you're using AI in the classroom now, or if it's something you're maybe considering. So if you have used it, go ahead and click yes. If it's not something you use, not a problem. That's why we're here. You can go ahead and click no. So I'll give you just a quick second here, just two options, so it shouldn't take quite as long. And we'll give you about 5 more seconds. And let's go ahead and close that poll, Sada. We'll get a sense of where people are at in terms of experience. So this first section, we're going to talk about how to use AI in the classroom. And it looks like about an even split. That's perfect. So we have some people who've tried it, some people who are going to be starting it. And this will be a great chance then for our first guest speaker to tell us a little bit about using AI in the classroom. So I'm so thrilled to see this speaker. She is the first person that I worked with when I started to explore kind of the future of education. And it's been over a year plus now that we've been kind of writing and thinking about how education might be changing with technology. She's a brilliant mind and founder of an organization called Ed3DAO that works with educators around the globe to provide support and resources. And I cannot wait to hear what she's going to share today. So live from India, we're so excited to have Riddhi Saraf with us. Riddhi, thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing your knowledge today. You're on mute right now, but we're so excited to have you. And you can visit ed3dao.com to learn more. So yeah, go ahead, Riddhi.
Thank you. I don't think we can ever have a Zoom meeting without someone being on Zoom. So I had to do that for you all.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited about this. I think AI is this like incredible and powerful tool that is really changing the way that everybody is operating. If you are on starting to use AI in the classroom, that's great. If you haven't, you have to catch up, because your students are probably already there, and your students are probably already experimenting with it. And if they're not, then other students are going to be ahead of your students, right? So it's really important that we all sort of, get as much AI equity to people as possible. So I'm Riddhi. I'm the co-founder of Ed3DAO. We're a community of educators. If you go to ed3dao.com, you can join our global community where we do a lot of free AI, sessions and tutorials. We have courses, things like that. I also founded a metaverse organization called K20 Educators, where we build virtual spaces for learning communities. So I'm going to take you through some things to think about when you're thinking about AI in the classroom and how you can really orient your mindset towards it. So the first thing to know is, how are educators using AI in the classroom, and what are the possibilities and potential for AI? And there's 5 things that I've identified that seem to be the most useful ways that AI can manifest in instruction. The first one is content design. So if you are a teacher and you want to create lesson plans, you want to brainstorm, you want to create assessments, those are all very possible with AI. And what that does is it saves you so much time. And it also allows you to create much more differentiated content that you wouldn't be able to with just one person, because it just it would take so much more time if you did it alone. The next thing is efficiency and administrative. So using AI for grading, for creating templated content, for FAQs, if you're working with parents, note taking. So, AI can actually take notes for you so that if you're working with a student, for example, you can actually track those notes and put them into report cards, things like that. Student engagement is another way that teachers are using AI. So one-to-one tutoring. So, you can train an AI guide that will work with a student individually and actually answer their questions. And you can actually, have 50 AI guides at the same time. So that can sort of like provide that one-to-one personalization that students often need. Data collection and analysis. So AI is really good at aggregating data and creating reports that will sort of like help you analyze what's going on with your students. And then teacher training. So if you're, working on developing your own competencies and you want to actually grow your own sort of adult learning, then you can actually have AI help you do that. So, the things that I talk about and I write about are sort of encompassing a lot of this, and I work mostly with leaders. But what I wanted to talk you through today is how to actually use AI to think about instructional content. So the first thing is that, there are 3 main things that you could think about when you think about instructional content when you're teaching with AI. One is, how do you enhance engaging students? How do you enhance that sort of part of your lesson? The second one is, how do you differentiate instruction? So create individualized plans. And the third is, how do you take the data that you've gleaned from everything that, you've taught into actually, providing more instruction for students. This is something that I've developed over the last few months. And basically, you're probably familiar with Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy is a very popular cognitive framework that's used in the US. I'm assuming it's used in different places. It basically shows you what the cognitive lift for a student would be if they were engaging with different types of activities. So for example, the very basic thing that students can do to learn is to remember something, right? So recalling specific facts. So that's at the very bottom. Then in order to develop their cognitive abilities a little bit more, they could understand or make meaning of instructional materials. Then they can apply what they've made meaning to different situations. Then they can analyze by connecting different relationships. They can evaluate by making judgments about something, and then they can create something totally new. So as you go up this taxonomy, you basically allow students to get more cognitively robust and more cognitively sort of complex, right? There's research out there that says this should actually be a spiral and not a triangle, but it all sort of applies regardless. So what I did was I actually mapped AI to Bloom's taxonomy so that you can understand as educators, what does AI do really well and what does the human do really well? So at the very bottom I actually did this backwards, so let me just do it again. Okay, so at the very bottom is remembering. So AI remembers things really, really well and way better than humans, right? It has, billions of neural links. It will remember things way more than one individual can. So that's a plus. That's a green sign. It does that really well. Now, what's funny is AI does not actually make meaning or understand anything that you're saying, right? It uses patterns to recognize what is potentially happening, but it's not actually making any meaning that is opinion-based or that is values-based. And there are many examples of that where, you will put something into AI and you'll think that it understands, and it's very good at convincing you that it understands, but it's actually just pattern matching. So the making meaning really is a strength for humans. The next is applying, so using information in a different situation. So this is sort of, it does that quite well, but again, because it doesn't make meaning, it doesn't do that through a way that is more judgment-based. It does that through pattern recognition. So again, you have to be really careful about what you're getting from this AI, because you're going to see that sometimes it gives you false information or it gives you things that doesn't make sense because it's not actually making meaning, it's just pattern matching. Analyzing, so creating relationships between things, it's actually really good at that because again, it has these billions of neural links. And so it can say that, you know, something that Scott taught or something that Bree taught, something that Mike taught, they all sort of like go together and they can create relationships there. This is a really big one, evaluating. So AI does not do this well. It does not make judgments. And what's really important here is it can give you information about what to make judgments on, but humans really need to make the judgment because humans have all this experience. We've got our emotions, we've got our relationships, we've got our human experiences. And in order to make judgments using ethics and morals and things like that, AI doesn't do that. It can do exactly what you tell it to, but humans really do that well. And the creating part is another cautionary sign because AI can only create what you give it, right? So it will match different things together and it has billions of opportunities to match things together, but it doesn't create something new. Humans can create something brand new that has never existed before, but with AI, they're pattern matching. So although it seems like it's new, it's actually an iteration of something old. So it's a good way to think about this because as you are working with students, or even if you're working with adults or anyone, it's important to understand what you do well and what AI does well. So the next thing that I want to take you through before I pass the mic off is really how do you prompt with AI? Scott gave you a good method called RIPE in order to sort of like understand prompt engineering. But this is something that I've come up with. I call it the 4 Ps. And basically, you know, the way that you tell AI what you really need. And this actually, what's great about this is it doesn't just apply to teachers. It applies to leaders. It applies to social workers. It applies to anyone that, you know, is in a context to like develop something that is more, you know, instructional or coaching related. So the first thing that you do is you tell AI your pedagogy. What are you teaching? Include your subject, your topic, your pedagogy, your frameworks, everything that you want it to know about what you're teaching. Then you tell it who you're teaching. So I'm teaching 3rd grade, you know, students with learning differences. One of my students has an IEP. One of my students has, you know, autism, whatever it is, you can actually tell it. The next is purpose. What are the goals and outcomes of what you're trying to achieve? So my goal is that I want my students to really understand photosynthesis, and I want them to be able to create a project, right? So putting the goals. And then the last thing, and this is up to you if you want to include it, is what are the problems that you're trying to solve for? So if your students are like not engaged, or if they're not understanding something, here you can say to AI, my students have a lot of trouble focusing. And so can you give me some tips on how to focus using this lesson plan? So if you use these 4 Ps, then you can actually give a prompt to ChatGPT or Bing or whatever you use in a way that's like really targeted and will actually help you solve your problems. So one thing that I actually really like to do as I actually get a content from a prompt is I like to iterate. So I like to actually revise it. So once I give it the prompt, so once I use these 4 Ps, I actually ask it, what else do I need to make this plan really effective, right? How do I make fidelity and teacher preparation? What are the blind spots I might encounter? What have I not thought about that I should think about? What are some alternative perspectives? What hasn't already been mentioned? And this is one of my favorite prompts, which is what are some unintended consequences? So just to sort of summarize what I just said, which is first, you sort of tell it your context using the 4 Ps. And then to make your prompt even better, to make your output really better, you actually ask it these questions to basically be your thought partner. And a lot of this is actually available in an article that I've recently published, which is available here. So at the very bottom, gettingsmart.com/the cognitive dance of AI / this will actually give you a lot of the sort of like details for all of this stuff. So what I wanted to do was, Scott, do we have time for a quick demo with ChatGPT? Yeah, okay. So what I wanted to do was actually use these 4 prompts, these 2 prompts, and actually use ChatGPT to generate a lesson plan. So I'm going to share this. Can you see ChatGPT, Scott? Yeah, okay, great. So I've used the 4 prompts and I'm talking about a project-based learning plan. I'm talking about photosynthesis in grade 3. I'm using Buck Institute Education PBL framework because I really like that. And you can use whatever framework is applicable to your school or your district or your country, whatever you prefer. I gave it some outcomes. I said it should include a compelling project. It should have some real world problems. I told it that one of my problems is that I really want to know what the teacher and the students, how they manage the project, and how I can integrate opportunities for reflection. So I'm going to hit enter, and it should give me a lesson plan that is a project-based learning lesson plan about photosynthesis. And so you can see that it's getting started right away. It gives you a compelling title. It gives you the topic that I named. It's actually creating it for third grade students, which is the grade level that I've chosen. And it'll keep going through that. And the next thing that I'm going to do after this has all generated, I'm actually going to ask it, what are my blind spots? What should I be thinking about here? What could be the unintended consequences of this lesson plan? How can I think about this lesson plan differently, right? And then if I want to differentiate it, the next thing that I would do is I would say, how do I create a lesson plan for 30 different students that is differentiated? And it'll actually turn out 30 different lesson plans that are very specific to the students that you want. One of the things that I really like to do also, my nephew, he really loves dinosaurs. He's 5 years old. So oftentimes I will say, describe this concept in this topic. So I'll say, can you describe photosynthesis using dinosaurs, right? And then it'll actually tell you all that. So it's a really good way to sort of like create all of this differentiated content for you. So I'll let that keep generating, and let's actually go back here.
I was just going to jump in. Reedy, I love what you said about asking for feedback. I find that that's one of the things I don't see many people doing, both in businesses and education, is it's a really good strategy partner to say, which part of this is confusing for students, what will take the longest, so I think that's a really good way, not just to come up with new ideas, but to get feedback on your existing ideas.
Yeah, thanks for that, Scott. Yeah, this is probably one of the best features, and this is the thing that I actually really like to talk about, because a lot of teachers and a lot of people are using AI to generate things, but they're not using it to become better thinkers themselves, right?
Yeah.
That is the magic of AI, which is like, don't worry about what it's producing for you. Make sure that you're becoming a better human by using AI. Don't let it do everything for you, right? The concept of self-governance and being able to actually like become a better cognitive, thinker yourself. And the way that you do that, again, is to make AI your cognitive partner. And these questions can really help you. And there's a whole list of other questions if you check out, ed3.com, reedysaraf.com, or you can always ping me on LinkedIn or, email. So I'll pass it off to Mike Peck, who's going to go into assessment.
Yeah, and I think, Mike, if you want to open up, we can do a quick poll here while you're getting set up. So Sada, if you want to open up the poll about people using AI for assessment, that would be great. We can kind of see if anyone in the crowd is using it now for grading, for feedback, for other kind of aspects while Mike gets going. So you can see the question now in the poll. So feel free, have you used AI for assessment? Meaning, have you used an AI tool to grade or evaluate progress in your classroom or in your work setting? So we'll give you just a second here. While that's going, we have a lot of great questions going in the Q&A. Encourage you to go in there and drop those in. I'm doing my best to answer them as we go, but I think a lot of what Reedy said talks to some of that in terms of there was some questions about adaptive learning, but I know Reedy will jump in and add some more details. And another question about ChatGPT 4. So she was on the paid plan of ChatGPT, but you can access the exact same thing for free via the Bing browser. You just have to make sure to click precise. So by default, it goes on the 3.5. 4 is actually quite a bit better. So I always recommend, if possible, use 4. All right, so we can close that poll and go ahead, Reedy, up.
While Mike is setting up, just a couple of answers to some of these questions. So one of the questions I'm seeing sort of over and over again is this safe for students? And the answer is somewhat. The way that the internet is somewhat safe for students, where they can access anything they want, ChatGPT and these AI tools are the same way, which is there's a lot of content that they could be exposed to. So you have to be really careful about how you're engaging with them. There are ways now in ChatGPT to create custom bots that will allow you to actually protect what students are seeing.
Perfect. Yeah, great feedback. And Reedy will be answering questions. So feel free, if you have questions on our section, put them in the Q&A. Just due to the large number of attendees, we can't do voice questions, but we'll make sure to hit them, and then we'll have discussion at the end based on your questions. So excited to welcome another friend and colleague. He, along with Vritti, is a co-founder of Ed3DAO. He is also a director of technology, so he has to go to school right after this, right? So he's in the classroom literally. So he sees this on the ground and also sees, as a technology director, how students are maybe using this in ways that we don't expect. So excited to hear how students and teachers are using technology. Excited to welcome Dr. Mike Peck.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. It's great to have so many folks joining us to discuss such an important topic and timely topic in education. Yes, my name is Dr. Mike Peck. I'm also a co-founder at Ed3DAO. And Scott is correct. Yes, I am going to be going off to school after this, where I serve as director of technology for a public school district in the state of Pennsylvania here in the U.S. And in that role, I actually got started with e-learning. So e-learning is something that holds a special place kind of near and dear to my heart. I think it's a really important component of my current job, where I work with both students and teachers and finding the best ways to leverage these innovative learning technologies to enhance teaching and learning. And so we couldn't have that discussion today about enhancing teaching and learning if we weren't talking about AI in some capacity. So in my particular section here today, I'm going to talk about AI in assessment. And as we talked about earlier and we've seen earlier, AI is incredibly powerful. Those of you who have had some experience playing with different online platforms or AI platforms have had the opportunity to see just how powerful these tools can be. And with ChatGPT 3.5 being available, I think in 160 some odd countries at this point, most of the world now has access to these powerful tools. And so as Vritti was sharing, some of the applications include the opportunity to use these tools for things like assessment. And so the way I like to approach this, and the way that we're approaching this in my school, is that AI can do a lot of things really well that enhance our current practices. And so I broke this into two parts, where we're going to look at some of the current applications of AI in assessment, but also we want to be thinking ahead. So here's what we can do today with AI, but we should be thinking about AI and what it can do tomorrow. How can it enhance what we're currently doing and improve what we're currently doing to help improve student outcomes? So let's take a look at some of the current applications. And I broke it into three different sections here. The first of which is assessment generation. As Vritti was sharing before, we talked about lesson planning. Designing new lessons is something ChatGPT or any platform can really assist with the educator in creating massive amounts of lesson plans very quickly. The same is true here for assessment generation, and we'll look at an example, so I'll demo in real time how it can be used. But one of the really nice things about these assessment generation opportunities is that as an educator, creating an assessment can be very time consuming. So if I'm in the classroom or if I'm creating an assessment for my school, that can take me a long time. But with these AI platforms, we have the opportunity to generate them very quickly. And not just generating them quickly, we can also use various different resources like curriculum materials. We can also personalize the assessments to meet specific learner circumstances. So if our classroom has learners who are very knowledgeable on a specific subject, we can make those assessments more difficult or focus in on specific objectives. And so our ability to customize these assessments is a huge benefit, because it's a huge efficiency time saver for the educator in the classroom. The second area that I think is really, really important, and we were just talking about this before, is when you have an idea as an educator, getting feedback on those lesson plans can sometimes be difficult. If you're working with other educators in your classrooms, or I should say in your schools, it's very difficult sometimes to get feedback on all the different things that you're doing. Just as Vritti was sharing, you can get personalized feedback on your lesson plans. Students can get personalized feedback in their assessments. And so we're starting to see the ability of AI systems to actually provide personalized feedback within assessment platforms. And so one of the things that from a cognitive perspective, oftentimes if a student gets a question wrong, it just tells them that they're wrong. But it may not give them the ability to understand where their thinking went astray. With using AI systems, we have the opportunity to provide personalized feedback that help the student understand perhaps, what they might have missed, and then give them the skills they need to further understand what they may have missed in the past. So it helps them really build on their strengths in real time. Now, as an educator, I can't give personalized feedback to 30 students at a time. And so using tools like AI can be helpful in providing that feedback just in time. And the last was the idea of plagiarism. I think when ChatGPT first came out, particularly in the schools that were in my area, and I would say probably, in the United States, there was a lot of conversation about plagiarism. A lot of large school districts said, we're going to block access to things like ChatGPT because students are now going to plagiarize. What's interesting is many of those schools, including the school district of New York City, they were pretty outspoken in blocking ChatGPT, and then a few months later decided, oh no, we're gonna let it into our schools now, because just like the internet, just like calculators, there was a big pushback against the use of calculators by math teachers years ago, and now it's in math classrooms everywhere. AI is not going away, and so understanding how to leverage it is going to be really critical. Plagiarism systems do exist. There are tools like GPT-0, which can be used to try to identify students who are plagiarism. The reality is, though, that there are some analyses that are beginning right now to take a look at how accurate these systems are. And generally, these systems are not very accurate. I can't recall the statistics specifically, but I believe there was a meta-analysis that looked at several different tools that do plagiarism checking, and they were found to be oftentimes below 50% accurate in finding whether or not someone plagiarized using content. So while there is a potential application here for it, and a lot of people are using it, it's perhaps not the best use of AI in assessment.
And I would just add there, Mike, from the research I've seen, there's actually quite a big risk of those plagiarism checkers, false positives on people who are non-native speakers of the language. So there's a big risk. Not only what I've seen is that ChatGPT 4 basically cannot be caught. 3.5 there was some accuracy, but GPT 4 is not caught. There's actually more risk of identifying students who maybe don't speak the language natively, and then you're causing a lot of problems for people who didn't do anything wrong. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah, thanks for that add-on too, Scott. And I would also add too, so if we look at since ChatGPT 3 was released, we're now talking about a year ago, where it became public. These systems are developing and moving so quickly that for plagiarism tools to catch up with just the speed with which and the quality with which these systems are producing content, it's sort of a game of cat and mouse. These plagiarism systems are always going to be playing catch up to the AI platforms that students are using anyway. And so it's kind of, in my opinion, something that we're not focusing on in our schools. We're thinking about how do we leverage AI and create assessments that are going to focus on the human aspects of education, not so much, the machine aspects like the rote memorization, focusing on critical thinking, problem solving, things that machines can't do well.
Yeah.
I wanted to include a quick slide here, and I think certainly from an e-learning perspective, some of these different frameworks for thinking about teaching and learning are really helpful to sort of bring concreteness to the e-learning space. So many of you have probably heard of Universal Design for Learning, Backward Design, or ADDIE, which are three pretty common frameworks in the e-learning space. What's really great about these frameworks is that they get you to think about how do we develop assessments and lessons for learners that really focus on their specific needs. And again, as a classroom teacher, I might have 30 students in my class. And so when I'm planning for, such a wide variety or wide spectrum of learner needs and experiences, it can be difficult to customize content in a way that really speaks to each student. The really cool part about AI, from my perspective, is that using AI, we have the ability to produce personalization at scale. Like Vriti said, if I ask ChatGPT to produce for me, 5 to 10 different ideas for lesson plans, that's no problem. I can have those produced in, 5 seconds. Same is true for assessments. We're going to look at some ways we can use assessment and personalize assessments in our classrooms. And AI allows us to iterate very, very quickly. It's not the solution to all the problems. We can't just accept everything it gives us, but it helps us produce content quicker. And as a human in the loop, I can then analyze, what's really useful for my students and what's not. So, like I said, there's current applications, and what I think is really important is that, we have these really powerful new tools at our disposal. We not only need to think about, how do we use this stuff today, but how do we use it tomorrow? And, an example that I give my teachers is that, like, how do you get to school every day? You don't ride a horse and buggy to school. We have cars, so let's use cars and leverage cars to enhance our ability to get to and from school and other places. The same is true for education. You wouldn't want to use old tools in a new world. And so we need to be thinking about how do we leverage these tools to enhance our teaching and learning practices. The first way is by developing more learning pathways. As I said, the ability to personalize educational experiences, both in assessment and lesson planning, is now our ability to reach that at scale using AI tools. So AI can use its powerful different trend and pattern matching systems to personalize learning pathways and develop assessments that really meet learner needs in real time. The other area, one of the other areas that I saw a question earlier in the chat was, can we talk about adaptive assessments? We're already seeing some of those tools available broadly. So here in the US, we've really focused a lot on assessments, standardized assessments for about the last decade. And so there's already a number of tools out there that provide adaptive learning systems for students. So as their understanding of a specific topic goes up or goes down, it does give them assessment questions that are matching their ability level. But what will be really interesting is how AI is able to offer more than just multiple choice questions at a specific level, but how it can provide things like interactive simulations, real world problem solving scenarios, and also providing a variety of different complex adaptive assessments for students based on their current level of performance. And the last area is kind of interesting. It's not one that I'm seeing a lot of discussion on at the moment, and that is, how is AI being used in engagement analytics? So AI actually has the ability to measure a lot of different biometric features, behaviors, and so you may see these things more in, like, for example, camera and tracking recognition systems where it's looking at facial recognition. And those tools can actually be used to measure understanding, to understand student engagement, to understand student behaviors. And so these are starting to pop up in some applications in assessment. In the US, I do believe there are some learning centers that actually use eye tracking features in assessment to see whether or not students are focused on, or test takers are focused on, the screen, as opposed to looking off screen and perhaps cheating. So I don't think it's the best use of AI in education, but it's an area where we are seeing some people explore, how do we use these really advanced pattern recognition systems to be able to better enhance student engagement. And so with that, I want to take a few moments to demonstrate really quickly, if we have time. Scott, we good on time? Okay. So I want to demonstrate how you can use these tools for assessment, just, very cursory levels. So the first thing I do, I'm actually going to exit my slideshow here, and I'm going to take a look at, I want to go to ChatGPT. And all right, so hopefully we're still seeing my whole screen here. Okay, perfect. So with this, I'm just going to ask ChatGPT to create a 5-question so we're going to create a quick quiz on North American geography. So when it provided these instructions, if we just kind of go back and I want to think about and I want to really demonstrate here how we can use ChatGPT to further refine our thinking. So what I just did was I asked it a very, very general question. So if we think about what Scott was talking about with RIPE, how do we provide ChatGPT or the AI platform, specific information to give us quality responses? So I just gave it something very general, which means I get this very general response. Now, perhaps I really want to focus on providing an assessment that has certain types of questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to say, okay, this isn't good enough. Really what I want is I want a series of, we'll say 5 multiple choice questions. And I want to use this at a level, let's say for my case, my students are 7th graders. So I'm going to ask it to provide me something that's more focused on their particular readiness level.
And while Mike is typing that in, I just wanted to highlight a few questions. Feel free to drop questions in the Q&A at the bottom of the Zoom screen. I loved what Fatima said. Fatima said, I think teaching is about learning things and skills and not about examining students. So AI should stay accessible. Thought that's a really good point and really good to bring up, is that AI almost forces teachers to be active teachers, right? Where the students do the work or the preparation at home and using technology. And when they come to school, then you're having conversations and reflection. And so a lot of this work that Mike's doing, it's really fun to see students do this individually. So I've seen a lot of success in classrooms where, you can invite students to ask ChatGPT or other tools, to create it in the thing they're interested in, kind of like Reedy said with the dinosaur example, right? So keep those questions coming and we'll kind of jump back in here with Mike.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, that's a really excellent point. I think we need to be considering, what it is that we assess in this time, because the ability or the time period where we're just measuring, content comprehension and content knowledge is sort of past us, because machines have sort of not quite conquered that territory yet, but their machines are becoming very good at identifying rote memorization type questions. So let's lean into the things that make us human. What sort of skills are going to be required? What sort of competencies are going to be required to participate in a global, economy, a global world? So here we see a much more refined set of questions. So now we have multiple choice. The last thing I wanted to show too is how do we make this more adaptive and more personalized? So perhaps my students, they need questions that are a bit more difficult because they're very advanced. So I'm going to ask it, can you improve or enhance the difficulty? And we'll ask it to focus on specifically on Canada.
And while he's finishing that, a few questions that I've seen, the recording is being recorded, so you will have opportunity for that along with the slides. So I'm glad that there's excitement to follow up. And I think all Mike and Reedy and myself, I'll speak for them, are happy to connect if you have more questions as well. So we'll make sure that you get our contact information.
Certainly. So as you can see, as I continue to provide it more and more context, we get more and more specific results that are focused on my specific needs. And so as the educator who knows my students, the more context I can provide this particular AI model, the more accurate or the more quality in terms of the responses that I get. Now, I can't just take this and say, okay, here's my quiz for my students. You always want to be reviewing. And so when we talk about with our educators in my particular school, is we want to make sure that we're not just taking what we find in ChatGPT and throwing it into our classroom. We're using this as a planning tool. We're using this as a brainstorming tool. We're using this as a tool to increase our efficiency, but we're always keeping the human in the loop. So my job is to review all this, ensure that the questions meet my students' needs, and then use it in the place where it's appropriate. And so the one thing I really want to demonstrate here is that by providing more and more context, that we can further adapt and personalize our assessment using tools like ChatGPT. And so with that, I believe I'm going back to Scott. So Scott, if you want to go ahead and take the sharing from me.
Of course. Yeah, this is so fun. I'm just deep in the Q&A answering questions. A couple for you, Mike. You can feel free to stop sharing and we can just take a few of these on audio. But, someone asked a really good question I flagged about academic integrity. So how do you see AI impacting academic integrity, and maybe, what should we be thinking about there?
Yeah, I think that goes right back to the question that you had just, highlighted when I was demonstrating there with ChatGPT. I think we really need to be really thoughtful about what it is that we're assessing. In an age where the world's kind of database of information is at your fingertips, we don't want to be focusing on just reproducing or regurgitating content that exists on the web. Asking simple multiple choice questions all the time doesn't really dig into the skills that our students are going to need for the future, which include things like critical thinking and problem solving. I'm really a proponent of entrepreneurship. Like, how do we provide students opportunities to demonstrate entrepreneurship in the way that they work? Because that particular field just encompasses so many competencies and skills. But I think we need to think critically about what we're assessing in our classrooms because we have such powerful tools at our disposal.
And
Yeah, that's
I can
great.
add to that.
Yeah, please, Preeti.
It's the way that we shouldn't believe everything we see on the internet. Same thing with these AI tools. We shouldn't believe everything that comes out of it. So as Mike very clearly demonstrated saying, here's the quiz that was outputted, but you can't rely on its validity. There were a couple of questions in the chat that asked that question, which is like, how do you make sure it's scientifically oriented, or how do you make sure that it's research-based and things like that? And you can tell AI to use a research base to actually build your content, but you cannot rely on its validity until you yourself do the critical thinking. And that's where the student critical thinking also will come in, right? So if students are using AI, which you should encourage them to do in your presence, right? So you should encourage them to use AI in your presence, but then teach them that this is not actually going to be your final product, because your final product needs to be evaluated. It needs to be analyzed. It needs to be assessed for validity and reliability, and it needs to be personalized to you, right? The student has experiences that AI doesn't. And so whatever assignments you're giving them, make sure that if they do use AI, they're really adapting them to who they are.
No, that's perfect. That's really good feedback. And I think, I've heard that AI is really good at creating B work, right? So if you think about a letter grade B, it's like a slightly above average, right? So I think where we want to push our students is to that kind of edges where they're talking about themselves or their feelings or things that aren't replicable. Because if we're just doing things that can just be created by a machine, that's the jobs and the ideas that are going to be automated away. But the interesting creative work is what we want to push our students towards. Maybe to that end, Mike, we had a question from Elmda about how do we automate steps to make teachers maybe just automation with AI for lesson planning or assessment. Are there things you're seeing in your school or other places that make it easy so they don't have to jump around to lots of different tools? I know there's a question about integrating with Blackboard, which I don't think it does right now. But yeah, tell me a little bit about kind of integration.
Yeah, that's a good question. So for my part, what I try to do is provide for our teachers access to resources that they can quickly use. So my job is to kind of vet everything that's out there as much as I can and provide them access to resources that can help, with areas. So in our case, we've identified 4 main categories, and that is curriculum development, assessment, content generation for lesson plans, and then also personalization or differentiation. And so I actually built a series of bots for our teachers that help them specifically with one of those 4 particular areas. So I used Poe to select specific traits. So you can develop bots that have specific purposes. You can give them material, not a lot. So it's not like you're training a custom AI, but you're able to provide it some boundaries that make the experience for the educator that much more efficient. And so that's one way that I've helped my teachers to try and sort of navigate this landscape. But finding resources that are specific to education, and there's a lot of them starting to kind of pop up. And even within your platform, so if you are using platforms like, for example, we use Formative, which is a testing platform. They have now integrated AI into their platform, so it quickly develops questions for them. And so we're starting to see it appear in a couple places. One, like I said, with custom GPTs, but also within platforms that teachers can use AI to build out content very quickly. So again, we're trying to provide for them access. So if you're a school leader here, sort of being out in this webinar is a great first step, but continuing to stay up on what's happening in the broader ecosystem of AI is really critical.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we're going to have a discussion after this next section, so please keep the questions coming, and we'll bring in Rigi and Mike for a little bit more back and forth. And we can also kind of open up screen and go to different tools. I know there's lots of questions about tools and best places to read and access articles, so happy to share that. I'm going to go ahead and share a little bit about AI and tutoring, and would love Sarah to open up the poll. We're going to do another quick question, see if you are using kind of AI on kind of the tutoring or mentoring space. So go ahead and answer that poll there. We can get a sense of if people have used kind of tools in this way, kind of another way to think about AI on a kind of one-to-one level. So very useful. And I see some questions, like Fadia had a question about elementary school. I'm going to show an example there that'll kind of help you with that. So go ahead and answer that question there. I'll give you about 10 more seconds. Just scrolling through any additional questions. You definitely will have the recording, so you can review as needed. All right, why don't we close that poll, Sada, and then we can see kind of on the tutoring side if we've seen some use. I think it's a really powerful way to use AI. All right, a little bit less than assessment even. So about 80% have not used it and 20% have. So I think this will be a really interesting way answering some of these questions that people have asked, in terms of personalized learning, helping students individually, thinking about it as a one-to-one, a scalar, a way to really reach students where they're at. So excited to talk a little bit about that, and then we'll come back for questions. So keep those coming. I'll let Mike and Rigi jump in the Q&A and answer as many as they can. As you've heard, I'm Scott Meyer. I write about AI and education at 5-Minute AI. I also have a company called Chip, and we'll actually look at kind of how that can be used to build some things. But let's first talk about why AI and mentoring and tutoring is kind of an interesting way to use AI. And it builds on what we already heard from Rigi. And it's called Bloom's 2 Sigma problem, which is essentially that one-on-one tutoring has been shown to have the greatest impact on improving people's learning. So if you think about moving from a conventional classroom to mastery learning, where we're diving into a subject, to where we have one-on-one support, tutoring has the greatest impact. And so the problem is that not everyone has access to that, right? And you think about, especially data in the United States, students who have, parents who are helping them are often going to outperform because it's essentially having a one-on-one tutor at home, right? Like it's an unfair advantage. And so we want to think about, how do we give this advantage to everyone? And that's kind of where AI could be a powerful option because it has such a big impact. So research has shown that among all kind of educational interventions, it has the greatest impact. It has outsized impact at younger ages, which is interesting. So young students especially benefit from it. And then if it's done during school, it has a larger impact as well. So thinking about not just at home or at night, but during school hours, how do you give more one-on-one attention? And so AI can be a really good fit for this. And so AI allows us to think about scaling a one-to-one relationship. So instead of having to pay additional teachers, or if you don't have the resources, like they might be able to reach more people at a lower price. It also can personalize to that student. So you're not giving the same material to everybody. You can meet them where they're at. And you can also measure kind of what they're giving back in terms of answers, how active they are participating. So you can kind of identify students who are maybe falling behind or not participating, and have personal interventions for them. And so obviously with an AI mentoring tool, you have 24/7 support, right? You give individual feedback, and you can set goals for each student. And you don't need special software for this. Like you could do this with a ChatGPT. It's really kind of enabling a history. So one thing a lot of people don't know with ChatGPT or other AI tools is that it does keep a history of a conversation. And so if you go into that same chat, you're able to keep that training, right? The more you talk to the AI, it's going to understand you and what you're wondering or asking. And so you can kind of keep that history, which is helpful. So when you think about kind of mentoring with AI, there's kind of three big areas we'll kind of look at right now, which is like more emotional support. How do you just help people talk through problems and give that kind of social emotional connection? I think AI is also helpful because if you can give academic interventions, the teacher can spend more time on that social intervention as well. It kind of frees up their time to do more one-on-one. We can also personalize learning and job pathways. So what people are learning, what they're moving towards, and track progress. So what I want to do is get our hands dirty in the next kind of 5 minutes and do this in a few different ways. So I'm going to show you first how you can build your own tutor bot. So Mike just said how he had done this for his school. I think it's an opportunity that we can all do. And so we'll use a tool called Chip, and that allows you to kind of create an account and train it. So what I'll do is I'll show you how I've done this. And then at the end of this kind of section, you guys can do it alongside me or do it on your own. So what I'll do is I'll tell you the website as well as give a QR code if you're doing it on your phone, and we'll kind of go through a bunch of different tools here. So what you want to think about is there's two different ways to create a tutor bot or a chat bot for your classroom. You can actually just prompt it. So you tell the bot how it will respond. So that's giving it kind of what Reedy showed us, right? So you're giving it a prompt. And then when students ask a question to that chatbot, it's going to respond based on how you trained it. So that's kind of a way for you to give your students the chance to ask questions, but they don't have to train it, right? You pre-train it. The second way that you can build a chatbot is to build on top of that and actually give it material. So you could imagine actually uploading an entire textbook into the chatbot. And as people ask questions, it's not only going to use all of the information it has through April 2023, which is the last update to ChatGPT, but it'll augment it with your information. So you could, for example, put your school or university's policies in there, right? You could add a textbook. You could add information that doesn't exist already so that it knows that. So that's going to be an interesting way to kind of build that. So let's go ahead and do this on the web and kind of show you how it could work. So I'm going to go to chip.ai and go to an actual bot that we're building. So I'll go over here to applications. Again, you can do this alongside or on your own, and then I'll share it with you. So I did one called the water cycle here as an example. I just click new application, create the water cycle. And here I can name it and give people free tokens. But what I want to look at is what's called the playground. So this is where we can kind of build these bots. So as I said, two ways to kind of train a bot, and you can do this on Chip. You can do it on Poe, which is POE.com, I think, or .ai. I'm not sure which one. I'll double check it. And so it's kind of a way to create things for your classroom that other students could use. So we can do a prompt. So here you can see you are a 5th grade science teacher, share insightful information, keep your answers short, use lots of emojis, don't refer to yourself as an AI. So I'm kind of giving it some instructions. And then right here is the bot, right? So when people ask questions, it's going to start chatting about this. And so by clicking this link, I now have, a link that I can share. And if we go to this bot, we can start to ask it questions. So a student could ask questions about any of this. So tell me about rain or something like that, right? And then it's going to respond kind of in that training or with that prompt that I just showed it. So it's kind of a fun way to give students a way to communicate with certain types of bots or tools, and you can kind of see it's using emojis, talking at a 5th grade level. So that's kind of how you can think about prompts. The second way that you can build bots like this is actually with what's called an assistant. So an assistant is something that's built on OpenAI, and I'm going to go ahead and just go to OpenAI so you can see what this looks like. So most of us use ChatGPT when we go to OpenAI, but you can go to platform.openai.com, and there's an option called API as well. And the API gives you the ability to build some of your own tools. So I'm going to go into the API, and on the left-hand side, there's one called Assistants here. So let's go into one of these assistants. We'll go into this EI bot that I created. So what you'll see here is that we not only have prompt instructions, but we also have this ability to add files. So this is where you could then upload, your own details from your class or from anything you're working on. So this is a fun way to train a GPT on your own information. So I just wanted to show how that is done. We're not going to necessarily do that together, but it's very possible, and it's a way that you can really customize an AI tool to your own needs. So that's kind of one fun way to build a bot in a classroom where people can use it, ask questions, and start to train things for what you're trying to do in your school. So let's keep going and show a few other kind of examples and tools that we could use. So besides training a tutor bot or a chat bot on your own, we can also do it with audio. And one of the things I've found, I'm curious when we have the conversation, Mike and Reedy can jump in, but I have found that the audio experience with AI is much more powerful than text. And where I see things going, we have at the end of this year, you're able to buy glasses now from Meta that will actually talk to you while you're looking at things in the world. So kind of a augmented reality. And I find it much more engaging. And especially if you have younger students, this is going to be the way that they're going to need to engage with AI, because they're not going to be able to type fast enough or even well enough to ask questions. And I did this with my kids. So I have 4 kids who are 10, 8, 6, and 2. And obviously, like, they're not typing, right? Like into ChatGPT. But there is an option now with the GPT mobile app to actually just talk with it. And I thought it was fascinating to see what my daughter asked. I wasn't in the room. I just kind of let them do it, but it was under my account. So I could go back and look at the conversation. And you see here, she said, "What do you do when one friend is treating you very badly?" Right. And then she asked a little bit later, "I want to know why my friends are being so mean to me and just me." And really sad as a parent to read that, but also really important to know that's what they're thinking about. And so it's interesting to think about potentially ChatGPT, audio, or other kind of audio tools being a way to unlock feelings in a way that, I wasn't there to just ask one-on-one. But if I could see what they're thinking, then I can have personal interaction. And so we go back to that AI sandwich we talked about, is we might prompt them. Maybe we give our students time to go chat with their AI tutor at scale, right? But then we come back with the human connection and kind of engage with people who need the support. So what I want to do is show you kind of how this AI GPT audio works, because it might be new for people. So I'm going to share my screen again and make sure I share the sound this time. And I should be able to get my phone over here. So this is only on mobile. So that would be the one kind of trick. So let's see if we can get there in just a second. All right. There we go. We can go off of the screen share. And can you see that, Reedy? Let's see. No. Okay. Let's go off of. Let's try one more time. Let's go the entire desktop. That should do it. Perfect.
I think while Scott's doing that, one thing that came to mind here. So I've been using this feature to just capture thoughts. So my day tends to be pretty hectic in working across several different school buildings and with several different stakeholder groups. Oftentimes I forget to write things down. I find this really helpful for tracking things that happen during my day. So if I have a thought, I open the app, I press that button to record, it captures my thoughts, and it'll even produce like summaries for me at the end of the day of, the highlights or what things I need to like pay attention to. So it can be incredibly useful, especially when you're kind of on the go, trying to capture like quick disparate thoughts, and then even summarizing those thoughts for me, which is a huge time saver for me as a school leader.
That's amazing. So Mike, with your mic on there, can you see the ChatGPT screen mirror or not? I don't know if that shows up on the screen share. Oh, you can. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to click this little headphone icon down here, and you'll see this kind of bubble thing going, and it's connecting now. So I could ask ChatGPT, tell me a little bit about the water cycle.
Absolutely, I can explain the water cycle for you.
Are you able to hear that, Mike? I might
The
need to
water
take my
cycle is a
headphones up.
continuous process where water moves from the Earth's surface into the atmosphere and back again. It starts with evaporation, where water from oceans, lakes, and rivers turns into water vapor and rises into the air. Then comes condensation, where this vapor cools and forms clouds. Next is precipitation, like rain.
So you can kind of get the idea of, what's possible, right? And so definitely love the audio as a really fun way to sort of get students engaging who can't type. So I think that's a great solution for younger students. It will have to be on a mobile device. So that might have to be like an iPad or something like that in the classroom. Now, I want to take it and get even weirder, and we can talk about kind of audio and AI tutors. So one of the powerful things, a tool that I really enjoy, is called ElevenLabs. And what this does is allows you to create audio off of text. And this is kind of moving in this world where you could have, tutors that actually are chatting with students. And so again, there's a QR code for that, but ElevenLabs allows you to create audio off of any text in any language. And so here we could say, are you having trouble with your homework? How could I help? And so I can share that, I can just play it with any voice here. I can kind of pick mine. I forget. One of these is really British. We'll see which one.
Are you having trouble with your homework? How can I help?
Yeah. So we can change different voices, but then I could just click it over to Arabic, right?
الوقت هو الشيء الوحيد الذي لا يمكنك شراؤه.
And I can jump to Spanish, right? And so what this does is it allows you to now cross international borders in your classroom. So if you have people who have different language skills, it's a way that you can immediately talk to them. And while this just little example isn't so ground shaking, this can connect into tools. So essentially you could connect ElevenLabs into a chatbot or into a tool in your classroom. And so people could have real-time translation. They could also start to learn other languages. They could also ask questions. And this gets even more weird and interesting when you combine it with other tools. So a second tool to point out is this one called D-ID. And we're using this with a classroom to create a visual tutor for students. So what it does is you can take an image or create an image, and it'll actually create kind of like a talking head or kind of persona for your students. And so, for example, here's a video I made for my previous company, and it was, kind of a mashup image, and I created the text.
Wouldn't it be cool if you could turn a photo of yourself into a Star Trek captain? Animate that Star Trek. Wouldn't it be cool if you could take a photo of yourself and turn it into a Star Trek captain, then animate that Star Trek captain to answer questions about Star Trek?
So just kind of a fun example, but what you can do is combine these tools, right? So if you have this visual kind of tutor, and you have the text from ElevenLabs, now all of a sudden you can feed language into a tutor that's giving information to students. So I just want to give a little glimpse of like kind of where things are going, because I think all of this is early and it's as bad as it will ever be, right? And it's only going to get better from here, which I think is really fascinating. So the last one I want to show you is thinking about tutoring from kind of like a career and learning perspective. So how do we create pathways for people to learn? There's two tools that I like. There's one called arc.cityassaschool.com and one called unschooler.me that do somewhat similar things. So I'll go to unschooler.me, and what we can do is actually create job or learning pathways, and then it'll provide videos. So open source content around that topic area. So I might put in something here like learn Arabic might be my learning outcome. And it'll create a course plan for me. So you can imagine everyone in your class, maybe you have a period during the day where they go in and put the thing they want to learn, right? And then this is going to give me kind of my course outline of what I should learn. Like first learn the 28 letters and their sounds, etc., and go through it. But then what I can do from there is actually create my course, and it'll find videos to teach me these things. So I did one last night on I want to become a teacher. And it'll take, 5 minutes or so to generate this, but it'll show us what we're going to learn. And then it'll have a video for each of these that is pulling from YouTube, right? So it's actually finding open source content to then hit that lesson plan. So if I want to learn a skill, I just put it in, It'll open source all the content that I need. It'll transcribe the key lessons for me. And so what this is doing is generating individual lesson plans around what the student wants to learn, right? And there's obviously, you want to double check this. It's coming from YouTube, right? So it's not like necessarily at some skill level or validation level, but it's a really powerful way to, within 5 minutes, every student is learning what they want in the way they want. So I think that's really exciting. So what I would love for you to do, either alongside us while we're doing our chat now, or as we kind of continue, is create an AI tutor yourself. So go into Chip or Poe and create a tutor. Maybe try out, if you don't want to do that, try out 11 Labs or D-ID. Make your own avatar. You could even make an avatar of yourself. Think about you as a teacher being available for your students virtually that they could talk to. Or if you prefer, go to unschooler.me or arc.cityasaschool.com and create a learning pathway. So you put in what you might want to learn and create a course. So if you have a class like Mike in a couple hours, you can go do this now and you'll be ready for class. So there's a lot of potential, I think, with these tools to help us focus on what matters. I don't think the goal is get rid of the teachers at all. It's instead let the teacher be where they need to be. And the most effective use of their time probably is not in front of the class telling everyone the same thing, but instead giving everyone the chance to learn what they want and then engage individually with the pieces that are hard or challenging, either social emotionally or academically. So hopefully what you've seen today is a lot of different ideas. Not all of them are going to be right for you and your context. So pick a few of them and try it. If it seems interesting, then apply it to your classroom or to a specific lesson. If that is useful, try to amplify it, bring it into the classroom or share it with a colleague. Because if you're doing those 3 steps, it's going to really take hold and become a tool that you'll use over and over. We know that technology is scary, but you have access to this powerful technology. And so we really want you to try things and get active. Now, a lot of you have experience with AI, and now we've given you a few different uses. So let's ask one more time, Sada, if you want to bring up the poll, we'll compare it to our beginning, how comfortable people are with AI. Hopefully now, after a little bit of exposure therapy from Mike and Vreede and I, we're more comfortable. But go ahead and give us the vote where you're at now. If you're very comfortable, if you're somewhat comfortable or not comfortable, and we'll see if we did a little bit of our job here before we go into the question and answer.
Scott, while they're doing that, would you mind going to the next slide, just so that people have a few resources at hand? Whoops, I think it might be in the shared one.
Yeah, I'm on the shared one, so maybe I can get out. But we'll go ahead and close the poll. I'll show it right after this. So yeah, you can close the poll, Sada, and we'll see where we're at. And then while she's closing that poll, we have an important survey. All right, we're at 65% very comfortable, 18% somewhat comfortable. So we saw a little uptick, and we're excited to see you all kind of try things out and continue to grow that number. We're going to show you the resources here. Before I do that, there is a link in the chat from Sada that is to a webinar form. So we would love for you to fill that in. Tell us how we did. And we also want you to know that this is the first of a series of 3 webinars. So we're going to be back 2 more times in December. We're going to talk about AI in the classroom. So go deeper on kind of what Vreede told us and some specific tools around creating lesson plans, kind of like the Unschooler example. And then we'll have another session on digital credentials and how AI can help us kind of track what people are learning and to credential them. So we'll send out emails about those. You'll hear from Sada and the group about all of that. So definitely look for that. We would love to have you come back. We'll have new panelists joining me with different expertise, so you hear some new voices as well. So what we're going to do now is we'll take questions for about 15-20 minutes. So I'd love for you to drop those in the chat. There are a couple resources then that we can share. Let's see if I don't have them on here, but yeah, okay. We have I'll share the screen here. We have a couple resources for free resources for teachers as well. So let's just kick off the chat here before I share and hear from our panelists a little bit. Were there any surprises from the Q&A as you were reading those questions that jumped out to you as things that either were interesting or surprising before we kind of take specific questions? So I'll maybe throw it to Mike first.
Yeah, sure. This it wasn't There was a lot of questions. I think it was really great to see, rather, that there was a lot of questions about how do we think about what we assess. So there was an anonymous question here that was posted about, concern about plagiarism. Like, how do we deal with that? And it was a very nuanced solution, and that is, instead of asking students to just produce a paper, can students create a presentation of some sort or demonstrate their learning through some other means? And I think it just sort of highlights the importance of focusing on skills that are inherently human, those presentation skills, the communication skills, the ability to reason and think critically. A number of people were asking questions around, like, how do we keep the human in the loop? And I think it's such an important aspect of working with AI.
Yeah, how about you, Reedy?
What I'm noticing is everyone wants to jump in. They want to create their own, versions of this, whether it's for assistance or for instruction or things like that. And I highly recommend continuing to attend these series of webinars that Scott and the folks here are hosting. I would also recommend joining an educator community. You can join ours at 3DAO or somebody else's, maybe on Facebook or something like that. But the more you talk to other educators about these examples and about the ways that other people are using it, the more you're going to be empowered to do it yourself. And the more you'll be able to see models for what things work. So please, connect with each other. Please share with each other. Please empower each other. That's really the most important part of really getting this into practice.
Yeah, that's perfect. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because there was a lot of questions about tools. So I'll kind of roll through a few based on what people were asking. First, I think we can see the QR codes here that you had mentioned. So Reedy, just give us a real quick, the Substack at the top is a blog to keep in touch with kind of education topics. And then Ed3DAO is a community of educators, I think we mentioned. So that's a place where you could kind of meet people from around the world. I mentioned this in a few Q&As specifically, but if you want to access ChatGPT, this article is very useful. You can find it on YouTube or on my blog, but it just shows how to access ChatGPT for free. And so there's a few different ways to find that. So the one that is probably the easiest is actually using Microsoft Edge. And I think I have it open. I'll just click. I'll find it here and show you where that's at in just a second as I move my Zoom tools around. But that's kind of the easiest way I have found to access ChatGPT 4 for free. And the reason that I would do that is 4 is significantly better. So if you open up a Microsoft Edge browser, which is free, on the right-hand side here, there's this little window called Chat, and then you can see the Copilot. The main thing I would tell you, make sure to click More Precise, because if you're, by default, it'll start at More Balanced. That's going to be 3.5 actually. So More Precise is going to be 4, and then you can ask anything. The other thing to note is you can also add images. So you can upload an image and ask questions about an image. That's a really fun way to use in the classroom with students who might be less about text, right, and images. So that's a good way to do that. Another tool, people were asking for alternatives. I really like using Perplexity. It's another AI tool that gives really good footnotes, I found. So this is a way that you can, let's see what I've done in the past. What are best practices for SEO? So this is a question I had. And what it does is it gives me the sources it's pulling from right at the top, and then gives me the answer as well. So you can think about it as ChatGPT with a little bit more footnotes, and really good app. So that's another one if you want to try. We heard about Poe, so it's Poe.com. So you can get an assistant, and you can also use ChatGPT as well as test other. You can test other LLMs as well as create bots as well. So that's a good resource. I mentioned Chip, so that's the company that I've helped build, where we help people launch apps, and you can build your own AI tutor there. Another tool that I really like is Firefly. So if you want students to create images, this is free. There are a lot of them out there, like Midjourney I like a lot. But with Firefly, you can just type in a word. We can go here to text to image and generate something. So if we wanted to have students design, our classroom, like create a creative classroom in Saudi Arabia, and then we can click generate, and it's just going to create that artwork for us. So that's a fun one. Another one I like is Gamma, which creates PowerPoint presentations with AI. And then someone had asked about websites. I find Framer is quite good. So just wanted to roll through a few tools because I know a lot of people were asking about that. So let me jump in. Can I send the links in the chat? I don't know if I can actually. Let's see. Since it's on Q&A, I don't think I can send the links in the chat. But what I'll do is I'll put those all on one slide at the end. And then when we send out the slides, you can access those as well as from the recording. Let's see. Other questions. I'm catching up here for Reedy and Mike. So if there's one on there that you thought was interesting, feel free to ask.
There was an early one that I thought was pretty interesting and important to note. They asked, what's the difference between AI and automation? And I think it's really important to understand the difference there. AI is actually using many neural links that are simulating human thinking. And so AI tends to be a lot more complex in pattern matching, whereas automation is pattern matching in a way that you're telling it to do in a repetitive fashion. So it does the same thing over and over again in the way that you tell it to do. But AI actually has many different patterns and many different combinations that can create a lot of different possibilities and potential. So AI is like far more powerful than automation. You can use AI to automate things, but AI can actually go above and beyond what I think we even have experimented with so far.
Excellent. Yeah, and I think what I can do as well, I know a lot of people were asking for the tools. Since we just have the Q&A, I can put it together in a blog post, and I'll make sure that Sara has that when we send out the recording. So I'll try to put all the links that we just talked about. So for Noman or others, Nawal, other people are asking about that. So any feedback on, let's see, a lot of questions about what's free and paid. And what about, yeah, go ahead.
There's a website called AIeducator.tools, and it's basically a giant repository of all the AI tools that are available, and it actually indicates which ones are free and which ones are paid, and it indicates the purpose of using them. And so if you are looking for more tools, go to AIeducator.tools, and that's been really helpful to me as I look for AI tools.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's great. Well, Mike, I'm curious about what are the questions your teachers are bringing? One of the things I've seen across schools and workplaces alike is people are using AI in private because they feel like maybe it's illegal or maybe they shouldn't be doing it. And what I really have encouraged people to do is how do you get teachers together once a month, every couple of weeks to just share what they're doing? So a really simple solution I have found is just a Google document or something that everyone can access, and people can put links to the things they're doing. And that could be links to chats they've had, could be links to tools. But what are you kind of doing to keep your teachers all at some kind of the same level, at least the same floor? Maybe some are going to go way above and beyond, but how do you kind of do that?
Yeah, great question. So we started our school year with a workshop for all of our staff, where we shared with them, some tools, some use cases. For me, it was a great opportunity to get a sense of where my teachers were. And from survey data at that workshop, we were able to identify key areas where we feel AI can most benefit us. And so what we've done is create open repositories. So we just have a Google spreadsheet. We call it the AI Tech Hub, where we identify tools that are most related to our use cases and our needs. And all of our teachers from across our schools are able to share into that sheet. They can share AI tools, they can share questions, they can share, any kind of wonderings they have about these technologies, because, to your point about amplifying, it's not helpful if one person finds it and no one else knows about it. So it's really important that at this point that we learn, we explore together, and we share what we find, what works and what doesn't. And from there, we can plan our path forward.
That's great. Yeah, there's a couple of questions in here, like specifics around spreadsheets and mathematics and biostatistics and others. One feature I find a lot of people don't know about in the paid version of ChatGPT is Code Interpreter, which actually allows you to upload CSV files or spreadsheets and then talk over the data. So that's a really helpful tool in any kind of mathematics setting, or even like assessments, where you could upload a spreadsheet of test results and then ask ChatGPT, where are my students missing the questions most? What could we do to improve? So it's a way to identify kind of a signal from the noise of like a huge spreadsheet. So definitely check that one out as another solution right within ChatGPT. You don't have to click anything anymore. You just upload a spreadsheet. So it's pretty easy. Yeah. There were questions like we always get around privacy, security. So how do you guys kind of think about that in terms of sharing information, obviously with a tech tool, student information? That's obviously a concern in education.
Yeah, I think the general guideline is don't share identifiable information into any of these tools. Don't share, names or IDs or anything like that. I think sharing, things about your students, like they might have a learning difference or they might be interested in a certain subject, like those are okay because those are pretty generic, but identifying information, try to keep out of it. No matter, I'll be totally transparent. No matter what the tools tell you, no matter how much they say your data is protected and private, it's likely not. So, be careful about putting any identifying information into any of these tools.
Yeah, and do you have a policy? There's some questions about policy, Mike, that, how do we create a policy? How should we think about it? Like, how do you think about it in your school? Do you have something that parents sign, or how do you kind of think about it?
Yeah, so just really quickly, because I know we're running short on time, we're very much in a learning phase. So our main goal is we provided guidelines for our staff in terms of what they should and shouldn't put into these tools. But we're sort of taking the time to understand what these tools are doing, what they're used for, how they manage their privacy policies, and then we'll be moving policy on in terms of our understandings from that. So we're being very thoughtful about data privacy in particular right now is our main area of concern.
Yeah. That's great. Well, let's kind of wrap. Reedy, maybe give us a last kind of takeaway people might want to go home with. If they remember one thing from you today, what should it be? And any advice for the teachers here?
Yeah, I think the more you can tell AI exactly what you want, the more precise your output will be. And using AI as your cognitive friend, as somebody that you can rely on as a critic, as a philosopher, as a guide, as someone who is a mentor, is probably one of the best uses for AI. You can apply that to yourself. You can apply that as a leader, as a teacher, to a student, anything like that. So let AI be your cognitive partner. And then please share with others, right? Connect with other people that are within your roles or aligned to your roles, and share with each other, because you will get so many more ideas than you can think on your own.
All right, Mike, same question for you. How would you like to wrap us up here?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for your time and attention on such an important topic. And there was a great comment here at the end. It said, in the future, teachers could be replaced with AI. And I'll leave you with this. Teachers will not be replaced with AI, but teachers who use AI will replace teachers who don't. Just like the internet's become an incredibly powerful tool for all of us as educators today, AI will do the same. And so it's important that we continue to explore, understand the AI landscape, and think about how this can be used to enhance teaching and learning in our classrooms and our schools.
That's amazing. Well, I think if we would have given this talk 3 weeks ago, we would have shown different tools, and 3 months ago, we would have shown even different tools. And so I think, we started off by talking about the AI sandwich, and I think some of these frameworks are going to be with us regardless of what comes next. And so if you come to AI with these frameworks of, I'm going to dance with it, that's going to be really useful. And no matter what comes next, like yesterday, I saw an amazing text to video tool called Pika. So that's going to be coming next, where you could type in something, it'll create a video for you. So this is just going to keep coming. And so the best thing you can do is not be overwhelmed, but instead try a little bit and just do the things that work for you, right? You don't have to do it all. We showed you dozens of tools here today. I hope you take one of them, right? Or one aspect and apply it, because you're going to find something that can help you. And like Reedy said, it's not, you don't have to just live in the metaverse always. Instead, it can be really that thought partner. Maybe you can say things that you wouldn't normally and get feedback from someone that you don't want to bother all the time, right? Your mentor or your friend, it's like at some point they get sick of reading your papers or giving feedback on your ideas. So this is your kind of offload from that. And I think education is ripe for disruption. we can not only improve it, but also there's the challenges of access. And in lots of parts of the world, including where I live, there's not enough teachers. And so it's not about replacing teachers, it's about giving students access. And I think that is really exciting about AI. That's exactly what we're going to talk about in our next webinar, which is coming up in about 2 weeks, I believe. So Sara is going to be sending you an email inviting you to that. And we're going to dive into more tools about how to use it for curriculum and designing learning experiences. So if you enjoyed looking at kind of different tools there, you would love that webinar, and we would love for you to join that. The link to the recording will be there. I'm also going to put all the tools we kind of mentioned on my blog. So you can see in my name, I have 5min.ai. So if you go there, you can subscribe. And when I put that up, you'll get an email. So that I'll do that today. So you have a list of all of the links that we had, and then we'll put that in the slides as well. So when you are emailed the slides, you can get that. I know there's more questions. I would love to keep going and hitting them all. But I think now I'll turn it over to Sara to wrap things up. I know there's some questions about attendance and other pieces. So if you have any housekeeping items, you can do that, Sara, and then we will say thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you everyone for really connecting globally around this topic. I think this is an exciting way to think about artificial intelligence.
Thank you, Scott. There is a link to the webinar survey has been provided in the chat. We kindly ask the participants to complete it within 10 minutes after the end of the session. On behalf of the National E-Learning Center, we thank our distinguished moderator, Mr. Scott Meyer, and Dr. Michael and Ms. Saraf, and of course the participants who attended this webinar on teaching with artificial intelligence. I am Nasser Al-Ansari from National E-Learning Center. Thank you for joining us.